a while back there was an aircraft crash in, well, where's the map? That crashed in Kazakhstan. Aktau was going from Baku to Grozny, or that was Baku to Grozny, and then diverted across the Caspian Sea and crashed in Aktau. It's now been admitted by Russia after they've finished their investigation that it was because air defense missiles had hit it. I was like, okay, well, the question is, why had Russia fired air defense missiles at a civilian jet that was flying inside basically Russian territory, coming from Azerbaijan into Russian territory? I mean, why target something that I guess was known? I mean, Chechnya, not necessarily much Russia. The article here says that, okay, that Russian missiles had detonated beside the aircraft last year after Ukrainian drones entered Russian airspace, and fundamentally the aircraft crashed and most people died. Don't know if there are any survivors from that one. That was the footage that was shown of the aircraft unable to maintain pitch and basically lawn darted right at the very end. Quite clearly it had the elevators damaged, which is consistent with a missile hit. Not so much a big explosion on the fuselage, but damage from missile shrapnel and to control surfaces, basically. So it was mostly a plane until it wasn't. And so it was obviously air defenses had activated after drones had entered the airspace. And so it crashed Christmas Day last year. Well, not Orthodox Christmas, but everybody else's Christmas, after diverting from southern Russia, where Ukrainian drones were reported to be attacking several targets. At least 38 people died. And so they've gone through and claimed, acknowledged responsibility during it, and that, investigations are forthgoing, and they're going to continue to investigate what's going on. Interesting that this has happened when you go back and look at the MH17 shootdown and the continued position from Russia that it wasn't them. You've got an example here where they're willing to stand up and say, yep, we shot it down by mistake. Yet they continue to deny responsibility with MH17, which feeds into the theory that, there's many theories around who was fundamentally responsible. Now, the fact MH17 was hit by a surface-to-air missile is not in doubt. The fact it was hit by I think it was an S-400 class missile is not in doubt. Well, whatever class it was, but it was a missile that Russian and Ukrainian forces had in stock and used, or had the ability to use. That isn't in doubt. What is in doubt, and continues to be in doubt, is who had their fingers on the button when the missile was launched and who targeted MH17. Now, I fully believe that MH17 was shot down as a misidentified target, and that the target identification process of the operators of the missile at the time was flawed. In other words, battlefield ID, fog of war, they'd inadvertently misidentified a civil target, a civil contact, as a legitimate target and engaged it. The subsequent activity, it's clear that the investigation that was carried out laid blame at one party, but I'm still of the opinion that the fog of war clouded things a bit too much at the time, and it's a bit hard to say definitively whose missile that was initially. The launcher subsequently did go into Russia. Well, it's believed it was, because they had imagery of a S-400 launcher minus a missile heading into Russia. But who had that initially, who launched it, etc.? Yeah, it's a tragic mistake, is what it was. It was a horribly tragic mistake. It was sort of like KAL 007 shut down, or the USS Vincennes misidentifying a civil airliner and shooting it down, or Iranian air defense shooting down an airliner back in Trump's first administration because they misidentified what was going on during a series of missile launches and missile strikes. It unfortunately happens in battlefields, battle areas. So, yeah, what stood out here was Russia saying, no, it was us. We did this. And says that it was a proximity explosion, not a direct hit. But yeah, hence the confusion initially by the crew what had happened, because it was like right at the tail end. But yeah, it was amazing that it flew for so long after the attack, after the strike. Made it. Where's the diagram? A bit further down. Basically, from about here, I think, is where they said the strike initially was. So instead of its flight path, it went a lot further off in a different direction. Now, presumably, they struggled to have flight control, and potentially the airspace was closed because of the drone strikes, or the Ukrainian drones having entered airspace. So they may have had limited control over the aircraft, or they may have been directed away from the area because of active air defense roles. Well, they obviously got hit. And whilst the initial allegations that Russia was trying to cover things up, well, it's like, okay, they've come through and acknowledged that. So, yeah, kind of an interesting thing.